Hello, my name is Luca Brizzo. I'm a digital illustrator, and my main passion and focus within illustration are fantasy characters. I recently entered the Art War 4 competition over at QBrush, and I got selected as one of the finalists. So while we wait to see who are the winners of the competition, I thought I would make a video showing you how I made this painting. So first things first, we have to figure out what we're even going to paint. The theme of the competition was War of the Elements, and we had to pick one of four elements: fire, earth, lightning, and water, the one I went for. My initial idea was to take on an old prophet demigod character I made up literally a decade ago and give him some new shine and polish. The character has, as you can see, the body of a human, the tail of a serpent, with two additional serpent heads sticking out of his back. So he's quite complex, and he turned out to be a nightmare for posing in composition. I started off simple, just lower the camera to make him look dominant and display his design. That's it. But the problem is that at the end of the day, he's just standing there, and not much is happening. He might as well just be a statue. The second thumbnail I still really like. It's a bit more dynamic, and the tail has a nice swirl which is fun for the eye to follow. Now, he's not standing there, but he's not really doing much either. He looks like he's just sightseeing. The way I would solve this problem was to place a bunch of drowning bodies around him, but this doesn't solve my issue really. Because as far as the viewer knows, the bodies might not even really be connected to him in any way. They don't necessarily have to be his victims, he could have just stumbled upon a disaster. The third idea was to move him from the deep sea to a forgotten swamp. There, he would slowly move through water, searching for his next victim, while bones, skulls, and treasure lie beneath him. And then I realized something. This character will be insanely tough to pull off. There's a lot going on with him, and I could never quite figure out a design I like for him. And just to add to the pain, the swamp version of the painting would have him partially submerged in water, which would make the design even less readable. And to top it all off, none of these thumbnails were as dynamic as I wanted them to be. So I went back to the start, and decided to take a different character, one of his minions, the Night Terrors. Their design is incredibly simple and unique enough, and I decided to give the Night Terror two serpents that the previous character had originally on his back, so some of his design carried over. Here's the first version, and I liked it, but it looked way too casual. The second version was better, where she held onto the serpent tightly, but I didn't like the flow of the painting that much. And there was also this issue where the characters looked like they were merged together, which I didn't like. And with the third thumbnail, I knew I had something. So I redid the thumbnail and eventually landed on this final composition. And the reason I like this version so much is because the serpent that's the focus of the painting has really nice flow. The way he arches through the painting and around the girl is just satisfying to look at, and it complements his design. So here I am finally working on the line art, but I'm still in thumbnail size. The main reason for this is that keeping the painting small at the start doesn't allow me to get sidetracked with unimportant details. Here I am still focusing on the overall design and flow of the painting. Now at this point I enlarge it. I made the original thumbnail lighter and I started working over it with darker lines. No new layers, it's the same one, and I'm redoing the entire thing in a high resolution, so to speak. My focus at this point is to tighten everything up so that I clearly know what I'm doing and what I want later on when I start painting. And this also serves as a perfect opportunity to rethink a lot of the shapes and designs I have here. Now, I've added two basic silhouettes on two separate layers for the rider and the secondary serpent. Below it, I immediately start making a rough version of a background. This mainly serves to set an ambient and for me to better see what kind of colors I'll be dealing with. Now back to the characters. I have the base silhouette, the line art on another layer, and a new multiply layer in between them. My objective now is to set in the main shadows. Once the shadows are done, I add new normal layers below them and start setting in some basic colors while also thinking about their values. And now comes the part that's kind of boring for a lot of artists, and that's the rendering. Nothing too fancy is going on here. I'm just trying to add some life to the painting and to make it seem more realistic. The program I've been using throughout this process is Procreate on the iPad. Initial sketches were made with the basic pencil brush the app comes with, and all other brushes I use are also included in the base purchase of the app. I did some minor tweaks with a few other brushes, but nothing really worth mentioning. The characters themselves were a lot of fun to make. My biggest concern actually was the color of the serpents. They're based off of eels, and eels can come in a lot of weird colors. For example, a lot of eels have this vibrant yellow color, but if I was to use that, it would have potentially killed the dark mood of the painting. So in the end, I just went with the same colors you could see on a shark, and it worked out surprisingly well. And I sometimes wonder what this painting would have looked like if I had stuck with the original character, but I'm also glad I didn't. The previous character was complex, and it would have been tough to make strong arches within the composition if I had stuck with him. It is also for this reason that it would have been tough for me to make the painting have high impact, especially since I usually correlate high impact with big bold shapes. Another reason I didn't go for him is because I actually didn't want to challenge myself too much. Now, if this was purely a personal piece made for fun, then I would have went for it. But this was made for a yearly competition, and I honestly just thought to myself, go back to your comfort zone. Do the things that you're best at now and do them well. Later on, I can go back to more complex characters and experiment with them. Especially since time was a limiting factor. I had roughly 20 days left when I entered this competition, so I could have easily lost a week if I was to figure out towards the end of the painting that it's just not working. Now, here's a fun fact about the sky I made. I was mainly inspired by an old painting, The Slave Ship, by William Turner. Turner was famous for having a unique style that I would just call scratchy. It was kind of messy, and Turner used a variety of tools while making his art, and sometimes he would even scratch the painting with his nails, which is why I call it a scratchy style. And in the end, you get this worn out, aggressive look where there's a ton of small, sharp details that all work well together. It's not as easy to pull this off digitally, but Procreate has surprisingly effective smudge tools and some brushes with those exact same tiny details, so you can use those to your advantage. So here are the final results. Usually when I finish a painting in Procreate, I take it over to Photoshop just to add that final polish. And what I mostly do there is just play around with a lot of the levels, curves, brightness and stuff like that. I add some screen, multiply, color dodge and similar layers that all just aim to push the readability and depth of the painting, establishing more what's the focus point of the painting and what is less important for the viewer. So here we've reached the end of this little video. Thank you all for watching, and who knows, maybe I'll make another one. See ya!